now we're finding out that two other police officers were have been relieved of duty. Is what
Memphis
these.
police say in addition to the 5 officers fired and charged with second-degree murder, 2 other Memphis police officers have been relieved of duty and are under investigation, including Preston Hemphill, also a member of the now disbanded Scorpion unit, created to patrol high-crime hotspots. Police say Hemphill was the 3rd officer to respond to the initial scene, seen here on his body camera video released by the city. Later, you can hear Hemphill say this.
I hope they stop it.
The family.
The police chief and the spokesperson for the police department would not say whether or not he was on paid administrative leave, which leads me to believe, yes, he's on paid administrative leave. Two EMTs and a lieutenant for the Memphis Fire Department were also fired because of their actions or inactions during that whole stop.
The Memphis Fire Department says 2 EMTs, JaMichael Sandridge and Robert Long, and their lieutenant, Michelle Whitaker, have been fired after failing to adequately assess Nichols on the scene after he was brutally beaten January 7th, dying 3 days later at the hospital.
Oh, man, I wrestle with the concept of justice. I don't know what justice looks like for Black people in America. I don't know what it looks like, what it feels like, because even justice that we are quote unquote given is given from those who have perpetuated the oppression in the first place. So it's literally the oppressor giving you justice. I don't believe that it's possible, whether it's intellectually, emotionally, or whatever lead we want to choose, that those who have gained their power off of the very folks that they are harming are capable of also giving fair, quote unquote, justice, right? I don't think that's what takes place. I think what has happened here is this has been nothing short of, well, let me not put it that way. This has been a sacrifice of these police officers. This has not been a act of they fucked up, because when you begin to unpack the police chief and other members of the police department, you see all these motherfuckers ain't shit, haven't been shit, won't be shit for a long time. So this was a sacrifice. This was police officers, these police departments sacrificing these gentlemen, right? And I use that term incredibly fucking loosely. These gentlemen to quell any sense of righteous uprising and fucking rebellion and revolt across the country. This is not necessarily new. I think in the past couple of cases, we've seen swifter movements of quote unquote justice, where we had in other times past, we would have to wait for the DOJ to get involved and investigate some shit. This has been incredibly swift. I think it's been incredibly swift because of the egregious nature of it. Plus, I think there's a level of, I don't want to use fear, because I don't think they're afraid of what we would do. I think there's a level of,
I think fear is the correct word.
I'll say concern, right? Because I don't think they're afraid of us. Because if they were afraid of us, they wouldn't be doing the shit that they're doing to us. But I think there's a level of concern that they have of us getting together and tearing up some shit. But it's a sacrifice. I don't think it was justice. For me, I'm really cautious of using that frame, because I think the family is ultimately the ones who should be able to define justice for them, what they want for them. Because what my family would want for me is different than what that family would want.
I won't say that this was not justice. What I will say is that we need to be very cautious of lauding praise on the district attorney, the chief of police, and all of these people involved for how quickly things happened. Yes, I am not ignorant to the fact that in many of these cases, it takes months and in many times years, even with video evidence, before charges are even brought up or before we even get videotapes and all of that stuff. But I think in the wake of George Floyd, the city, once again, and I'll use L's words, were concerned about what could happen given the egregious and despicable nature of the video. That's why they tried to get out in front of it as quickly as possible. This police chief, people have been giving her cookies for her swift actions, but I want to make sure that we understand exactly who this police chief is. Chief C.J. Davis, every place that she has been a police chief, she has stood up a police task force or had led a police task force similar to this Scorpion task force that she had in Memphis.
Jump out boys.
And
Red Dogs.
With each task force, yes, she had the Red Dogs in Atlanta. She had another one in Durham, wherever she was. Well, I forget the name of it, but she had one in Durham, and she had this one. And each one, Durham and the one in Durham and the one in Atlanta, all of them have been disbanded.
Corruption everywhere she goes.
They got disbanded, and why do you think they got disbanded? Because like El said, because of corruption, and there were a line of bodies of people that were abused by officers. So she led
including
police officers.
Children.
Yes, including children. So she's not a savior. She's not.
This is
hero.
not a black excellence moment, ladies.
It's not.
This is not black girl magic.
It is
knock that
it
shit
is
off.
not.
This is not.
It is
She's
not.
not for you.
Man, a good book that you should pick up to get a better understanding of how police units like this were formed and how it bleeds into other parts of the police department is a book called The Rise of the Warrior Cop by Radley Balco. It's an extremely good book, and it gives a history of how these officers or how policing has evolved into this over centuries.
I want to say to our listeners, man, whether first time, long time, or last time, if you are someone who hears us talk about subjects, I don't want you to ever think that we're just giving you our unresearched opinions. If there's ever a subject that you hear us talk about and discuss on here, and you want to learn more about that particular topic, you should send us a DM, email. We will give you, I have resources, I have books, whether it's PDF or hardcover, that will cover just about every conversation that we've ever had on this show. And give you that shit for free because it's stupidity and ignorance is costing us big time.
There was a police unit, a crime task force that was formed during Giuliani's period that essentially, if you remember, Amadou Diallo was essentially the cause of his death. For those that don't remember, Amadou Diallo was shot in front of his home when police jumped out of the task force jumped out of their vehicles and pointed guns at him off Jump Street. And when he went to reach to give them his ID, his wallet, they dropped him with 40 plus bullets. As that task force is a pretty large task force. And this is to speak towards how these task force recruit people like this, just like these 5 officers that killed Tyre Nichols, to be members of them. 6% of this task force in New York was responsible for almost 40% of the police involved shootings in New York City during that time. 6% were responsible for damn near 40% of the police involved shootings, to the point that the task force was then disbanded in 2019, 2020, I think sometime around the same period of George Floyd. And our favorite Mayor Eric Adams, who said that he was a victim of police brutality, him and his brother, and has said that that was one of the reasons why he joined the police force, is now rebuilding or developing or bringing that task force back. He's bringing the task force back. So when you hear people getting excited, it's like, okay, well, she disbanded this task force. It's like, I had a conversation like this, matter of fact, the other day with one of our homies, and she was like, I'm excited to see, or happy to see, not excited, excuse me. I'm happy to see that she moved swiftly to disband the unit. And I said, no, This unit will be back in a few months, maybe a couple of years after the fervor dies down, and they're able to justify putting this unit together again because some alderman or the mayor or whomever wants to look like they are tough on crime.
Mhm.
And there are countless other task force just like this across the country that pull and recruit these ultra aggressive, ultra hyper, ultra, I won't even say ultra vigilant, but ultra malicious men to be part of these organizations.
Mhm.
Then, I mean, We Are the Night talks about the task force here in Baltimore.
Mhm. Yep.
I forget that there was one that happened in DC a few years ago. Policy.
I want people to understand that I know there's a large number of you folks uh, who fall on the more liberal camp who continue to scream about reform and training and all of these things. And I want you to pause for just a moment with all of that rhetoric and research. Just type into Google number of law enforcement reforms in the past 20 years. Type in training for police officers, new training, how often the training gets updated. And you will be absolutely blown away about the amount and number of reforms that the law enforcement has undergone consistently the last 50 years. Reforms have taken place and continue to take place. Training continues to be revamped and more training and this and that. It is not reform that's going to save us. It's not more education that's going to save you. It is literally the destruction of all that shit is the only option.